Hello there, and welcome to the EDC Empire. Today we're going to be taking a look at something pretty special that I've had for probably about the longest time in terms of review, besides the knives that I had before actually making videos. This is the McNees PM Mac 2 3.5-inch Gen 2, designed by Jonathan McNees and produced by McNees Knives in the USA. Now, before I get more into this review, I want to note that this is not a cheap knife. This particular version comes in at $610. This is a USA-made mid-tech. It is not a custom, but it is also not in the same even tier or ballpark as something like a Benchmade Bug-Out or a Spyderco PM2. And it is because of that I'm not going to be really comparing it to anything like this. It is more instead in the realm of your Chris Reeves, Hinders, etc. This is my third USA mid-tech that I've owned. I have owned a Chris Reeve Sebenza, a large one with black micarta, which the channel has not seen, and then also Chris Reeve Onumzon, which has appeared in, I believe, one video. So this, I'm not entirely new to this spectrum of the knife world. However, this was one that I took a while to decide whether I wanted to get or not. It's a little bit more less known. It's not to say that the McNees PM Mac 2 is not known. That is far from the truth, but there's not anywhere near as much material as if I wanted to get a Hinderer or a Chris Reeve. But because of that, I was kind of excited, and I have to say before I get more into the review that this has become probably at least my top 3 favorite knives in my collection. I absolutely love this thing. It's like the perfect size for me. It's very comfortable, and yeah. Now getting into the review. The PM Mac 2 3.5-inch Gen 2, which I'm just going to call this the PM Mac 2, is a frame lock, titanium frame lock with no lock bar insert or over travel stop. You use thumb studs as its primary and only form of deployment. There is an auto version of this, and there is a 3-inch version of this, but this is obviously the manual version. It runs on bearings for a very silky smooth action, and this particular version has MagnaCut at 63 to 64 HRC, which is just beautiful. This thing has been a joy to use and carry. The MagnaCut has held up really, really, really well, and this is just heat treated to, in my opinion, just about perfection. It is a, obviously, drop point blade with a nice flat ground blade, which comes down to a pretty thin main flat, and then it thickens up very nicely to the tip with a very thick and workable tip. The Gen 1 of the Mac 2 had mainly or only came in hollow ground. I don't know if the Mac 2 Gen 2 comes in hollow ground. What got me excited about this knife originally was that the fact that the hollow ground, it was hollow ground, it came down to very thin edge, but then came up to very thickness, or to a very thick tip. That is something that also happens here, to a little bit less of a degree, but still very, very thin. Not something like the Kershaw Scallion that I reviewed last week, or a Civivi Elementum, but definitely in line with something like a PM2 in thickness, maybe even a little bit thinner than that, and it's just been really, really nice. And then obviously this is a titanium frame lock with a titanium show side and a natural micarta inlay. There are versions without inlays. In fact, that's the commonness, and they come in milled and different colors and whatnot, but this is atomic titanium with this micarta inlay, which I think looks absolutely fantastic. The overall length on the PM Mac 2 is 7.71 inches when open and 4.23 inches when measuring it from the longest point. And then you have an overall depth when folded of 0.41, which means that in comparison to a pair of 3, for example, it is definitely not too shabby carry-wise. And then width of the pivot is 0.48 inches, which means that in comparison to your PM2, you're going to be about there, the same. And then getting into some size comparisons, we have the PM2 and Para 3, and what you can see here is that it's just about in the middle of these. It has about the same blade length of the PM2 and about the same handle length of the Para 3, which shows that this thing is fantastically impressive when it comes to blade to handle ratio in a folding knife. You can see it comes there right to the end, and it actually extends out to where you're normally holding it so that you get just a little bit of extra blade in it. It feels really fantastic because it does that. And then you actually have a blade length of 3.48 inches with an edge length of 3.46, which means it's going to be very carryable and pretty legal, especially if you are in the U.S. And yeah, it's just a very nice, very carryable profile and size. Then you have a blade stock of 0.15 inches, which means that it's definitely on the thicker side, but it's not insanely thick. And like I said, it comes down to a very nice, thin main straight, and then the belly gets gradually thicker until about here where it gets noticeably just very thick. And yeah, it's a very usable knife. The weight on this particular model is 4.28 ounces. That is going to vary whether you have inlays or different milling patterns, but this particular one has 4.28. And I do want to highlight that the lock bar side has milling on the inside so that you are able to, or for lightning, really. So if you got just the plain version on each side, I'm sure that's probably actually could be the lightest of the variations. But overall, I didn't find the weight to be too terrible. You're not really anywhere near that 1-to-1 blade to weight ratio, but I can't complain. Like I said, this is one of my favorite knives. It's just a little bit overbuilt, but not to an extreme degree, and I've really enjoyed it. One complaint, which I don't really have, but some people that I've handed it off to have had, is that the detent on this thing is pretty extreme. It was definitely even more so when I had first gotten it, and it's become, in my opinion, just about perfect. But it's definitely still on the heavy side. If you're used to like a Benchmade or like an Axis lock knife, or if you're if you're used to something like this, or even like a plunge lock, button lock, this is going to be a huge shock. It's definitely more, or has more of a detent than like my QSP Penguin, and that's just something to note. I don't have a complaint about it, but some people that I've handed it off to have. The action on this thing is extremely smooth and drop shutty. You don't even really have to kind of shake it closed, especially if you have it well oiled, and it's just been an absolute joy. Double clutch wise, I've had a little bit. It kind of wants to ride up. It has this really nice ramp. It's not just like a straight right and you hit the ball. It's a really nice kind of gradual feeling, so it's not really bad. And if you just push it over and let it drop down to your thumb, it's not bad at all. So I don't really care that much. I've not really been affected, and don't really mind. But if double clutch is something that annoys you, that is something to note. This thing is, of course, rock solid. No up or down or right or left blade play, and it's just been an absolute beast in that department. You would expect a little bit thicker of a stop pin, honestly, and I would agree. I've heard only one or two other reviews mention that, and I honestly would as well. I think it looks a little bit out of place with how kind of industrial and chunky this knife looks, but it does its job, and honestly, this is probably going to be all you really need. Like I said, I was drawn into this thing with the blade, really. It coming down to very thin, to a very thin main straight, and then getting thicker was very appealing to me. So I did kind of want the hollow ground blade when I was first looking at it, but I like this thing, even so. I think it's going to have plenty of life in it, and yeah, I don't have a complaint really about the hollow ground versus flat ground thing on this particular knife. You may expect that this jimping is completely useless, and often jimping that's this thick and wide and just kind of mountainy instead of just like little jigs would be completely ineffective, and it honestly usually is, but here it's not. The jimps are pretty sharp, and it makes it really nice just to push down with. Push cuts in this thing are absolutely amazing, and I really can't complain about it. And honestly, there's only just that for jimping, and it's a very just subtle knife that allows you really to hold it in whatever way you want to. The pocket clip is a complaint that I often have, and this one might honestly be about my favorite pocket clip I've ever experienced. The only thing that I dislike is that it's a little, I could expect a little bit more knocking down on the sides, but it's not bad at all, and it works really well. There's not really much of a bill, it just goes down and up, and it works very well. It's not in the way, it's not uncomfortable, it doesn't really even produce a hot spot, and that's a joy. He has other pocket clips that you can get, he has other hardware that you can get, but I don't feel a need to. This thing works so well, it looks so good in my opinion, and it leaves like the perfect amount of the knife remaining that can't complain, and really like this thing. The inlay also is really nice. I couldn't find very many videos with the inlay itself, and so I just had to go off of photos and assumed, yeah, I'm hoping it'll be good, and it's really good. This inlay fits really well. I haven't really seen this texture pattern before. It's like a checkerboard-esque pattern with circles instead of squares on the white side, and it works really well. It adds grip, it adds definite grip, it kind of locks you in, and yeah, I can't complain. It fits really well. It fits better than some traditional knives that I've owned, or most traditional knives that I owned, and yeah, I can't complain, honestly. But it is expensive. It's $610, which is not a small asking price by any means. This is, to date, my most expensive knife that I have ever owned. And am I upset with it? No. Every time I carry it, I absolutely love it. I can't really think of many things to say that I dislike about it. It's kind of perfect to me, but also it's expensive. If you can't get your head around this price tag, this is not going to be for you. But if you've been around for a while and you know what's in this thing, you know it's not awful. Is it made better or that much better than a Chris Reeve? No. But it is definitely equal, I would say, in fit and finish and in quality. So the extra little bit that you're paying is going to be coming down to design and some other little quirks and whatnot. Honestly, I would like to see it a little bit lower. You can get them lower. It depends if you want inlays and whatnot. The non-inlay versions are substantially cheaper, getting down to about $535, $540-ish. So you can definitely get them cheaper. So that is something to consider. But yeah, I mean, is it a little bit more expensive than other USA mid-techs? Probably, yes. I would give you that. But am I upset with the price? No. I really like this design. This is definitely going in my recommended knives playlist, and that's that. If you own the PM Mac 2 Gen 1 or Gen 2, please comment down below what you think about it. And if you enjoyed this review, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.